we've done 3 songs we never do. So thank you. It's just beautiful. Ruth Bader Ginsburg has certainly been on my mind this week, and I wanted to share some of the beautiful pieces I've read about her and a personal experience. I was struck by her way that she combined her Judaism and her being an American, that we have an amazing role model in her, and she lived her life like many of us do as Jews, that we might not be so Jewish to the outside world. We might not look Jewish, whatever that means, or we're not wearing black hat, or we're not identifiable like an Orthodox Jew might be. But hopefully, we are identifiable in our actions and our pursuits of justice and our pursuits in the world, that it comes from our Jewish values. And that has struck me so much this week. Another thing that really sat with me was the family she created with her law clerks. I've read article after article and story after story about the way she was there for them. One that struck me in particular was a story of Rochelle Shoretz, who is the founder of Sharsheret, which is a powerful, just fabulous organization that helps women with early onset breast cancer. It started with that cause, and it has expanded its reach to all breast cancer, ovarian cancer, peritoneal cancer, and all the women's cancers, and they do a lot of support work and baskets. Unfortunately, its founder, Rochelle Shoretz, who was a clerk for Justice Bader Ginsburg, passed away a few years ago, and she clerked in 1998, and she passed away, I think, in 2016. One of the eulogies at her funeral was given by Justice Ginsburg, and she says, "I have a large law clerk family. No member of that family was more dear to me than Rochelle Lee Shoretz." The justice added that each day she enters her chamber, she thinks of Rochelle as she is greeted by a silver mezuzah on her door, the only one in the Supreme Court, and a most meaningful gift. Wow. Another one of her clerks, and I couldn't find the article to give you the name, talked about giving her a tzedakah box that maybe she had designed. She was also a ceramicist, or and maybe it wasn't a clerk. I just read this article, and that was also a gift, though, from a friend who wrote an article. And then there was a beautiful piece by Eric Motley that was in the Times, and he did not clerk for her. He met her in a different way. He's now a vice president or vice chair at the Aspen Institute. And she was supposed to officiate at his wedding last Friday, the day she died. And they did know a few days before that they were going to have to postpone. Unfortunately, they didn't realize in this way. He talks about how they met when he was a 30-year-old Republican, recently appointed special assistant to George Bush, and she was a 69-year-old Supreme Court justice appointed by a Democratic president. He is African American and she is white. Their unlikely friendship began when Eric was sitting next to Marty Ginsburg at a welcome to Washington type dinner. And Marty asked him, "What do you like to do in your spare time when you're not working?" And he said, "Read and listen to music." And then he asked, "Well, what kind of music?" And he said right now he was working on Bach's Goldberg Variations. And they discussed his favorite, and Marty called Justice Ginsburg over, and a lifelong friendship began. Eric writes, "When the pandemic forced a postponement of the wedding, where she was to be a reader, she offered to marry us quietly in her apartment so that we could get on with our lives and celebrate later. She even shared with us a draft of how she planned to personalize the civil service of union. After we had quarantined ourselves for a month, the quiet ceremony was scheduled for last Friday, But 2 days earlier, we learned that she needed to reschedule. We clung to the hope that someday soon Justice Ginsburg would be able to unite us in matrimony. Needless to say, the news of her death on the very day of the planned ceremony devastated us. To have a Supreme Court justice marry you is one thing, but to lose a friend is everything. He continues, later that night, I made reference in my diary to what Wordsworth refers to as thoughts that do often lie too deep for tears. She seemed to have that effect on so many people that they became her friend. How special. Cantor Applebaum and I had the honor of hearing her speak last October in a room of about 80 people. And because I am on the board of the New York Board of Rabbis, which sounds very impressive, but I don't do all that much, but I got invited to this, and I said, can I bring a +1? I think Steve was out of town, so Cantor won out there. And I got to be in a picture with her that I'm finding out if I have permission to share, because when it was taken, we didn't. I mean, it was me and 10 other people. It's not like she knew I was in the picture, but I knew she was in the picture. And it was just such an honor to hear her speak. And she was exactly how you think she would be. She was kind and warm and funny and incisive and insightful. And it was a very, very special day. And, you know, I think you don't realize how special, maybe until looking back, realizing we won't have this opportunity again. And what came through was that she was a mensch. I was also struck this week with how she did combine her Jewish values in life and even in death. And we saw that one of her former clerks, Abby Gluck, spoke on Facebook this week through Jewish Women International about how the Supreme Court Honor Guard stood by the casket until its departure from the court. And she writes, we stood through the night. It was very moving and special, and did remind me a lot of the same kind of witnessing vigils that we did for my mother and my grandmother when they passed away. And there's a Jewish custom of shomrim, of watching over the body until the burial. So it's so interesting that they were able to incorporate that ritual, whether it was totally intentional or not, and she connected it to being a shomer, being a guard. Ruth Bader Ginsburg changed our world. She had vision and imagination to see a better world. She envisioned a world very different than the one she had grown up in. A better world in which gender was no obstacle to women's achievement, to their ability to dream big and to realize their aspirations. And then she set out to use the law to usher that world into existence. Rabbi Lauren Holtzblatt, who spoke at her private funeral, wrote, "It is the rare prophet who not only imagines a new world, but also makes that new world a reality in her lifetime. This was the brilliance and vision of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg." The rabbi described Justice Ginsburg's life work to insist that the Constitution deliver on its promise that we, the people, would include all people. Nothing could stop her unflagging devotion to this project, not even cancer. And again, Rabbi Holtzblatt's husband, Ari Holtzblatt, clerked for Justice Ginsburg from 2014 to 2015. And I'd like to conclude by acknowledging that I know I am sitting here today in no small part because of her efforts, her fight for equality, her ability to create a society in which men and women were viewed as equals and treated equally under the law. She dreamed of a better world, and she created one. We send our condolences as Temple Beth Torah to Jane and James and their families in her